So yeah, you've seen circle graphs before, but you probably know them by the word of like pie graph or pie chart, same thing really. But you've seen these before. So this hopefully shouldn't be too much of like the idea of it shouldn't be too new to you. There'll be a couple things in it though that you might not have seen before. But I'm going to assume you guys have a decent idea when it comes to at least these pie charts. But essentially, this is just displaying how a whole is divided, right? It's a whole, right? When you go buy a pie, you have 100% of a pie. If you were missing a slice and you bought it, you would be extremely weirded out because that means someone went and took a bite out of your pie before you opened it, which I have seen before. The co-op here sells half pies now. Inflation. So I just want to jump straight into it here. This is going to be this is going to be the shortest thing we've done in a long time of like how to do it, because it's really going to be, here's how we read it, here's how we do it, go. It gets no different ever from what we're about to do. So the following circle graph shows how people in Maxine's office building get to work. There are 350 people working in the building. So when we're reading this, what percentage of the people walk to work? We know that we have our legend here. We just figure out the amount of people that walk to work, which we can see is pitch black. There's two solid ones here. One's gray, one's black. This one here, right? So I can see that 3% of people walk to work. But the thing that most people are fine with reading it. Most people are totally fine with reading the graphs. It's when we're trying to do, I want to figure out how many people this represents. So now I don't want to know what the percentage of people, I want to know how many people actually go in there. So this is where most people actually, some people struggle a little bit. So easy way to kind of think about this is, so this is 3%, right? 3% of what? 3% of, if you ever see the word of in math, that means times. 3% of 350 people, you bet. Wait for the calculator to load. Come on. There we go. So if I wanted to figure this out, I don't take 3 times 350, right? That's not going to work. You can't get a bigger number than all of a sudden I'm at 1,000 people. That makes no sense. Remember, 3%, this is the same thing as 0.03, right? 3% is really just 3 divided by 100. 3%. Which if you do that, you get 0.03. So all I do is I take that and I times that by 350. So 0.03 times 350, 10 and a half. So I get 10 and a half people here. Now, if you rounded this to 10 or 11, you'd get full marks still, right? Like this is kind of a weird thing. You can't really have a half person. It's not asking you for discrete data where you have to round it. So in this case, we're just going to say 10 is fine. But if you did round that, I would get that. You get full marks. I understand what you did there. That's okay. That's it. That is how you figure out. If I have a percentage, I want to figure out the amount. Turn it into a fraction. In this case, 3%, this is 3 over 100 or 0.03 times it by that gives you your answer. We'll do another one a little bit later. So what percentage of people come to work in a car? Well, what percent is that one? Ooh. So close. It's both your answers. It's so 9% or sorry, 61% of people drive themselves, 9% carpool. So it's actually going to be 70%, right? So 70% of people come to work in a car. And then how many people is this? Well, all I'm doing is I'm taking 70%. I'm just going to go straight to the fraction now. It will be easier if you always do it in fractions because it's 70%. This is how many I have. On the top, how much of it I have 70%. And the bottom is of the total. So 70 of 100 times the amount of that I actually have, which is 350. So the percentage of it I have over the percent of the total times 350. So 70 over 100 times 350. So you can do that just on here with the little fraction button, right? That little A over B. I promise you, even though it seems, well, it's just 0.7, it will be easier for you if you get in the habit of doing it in fractions. It will be easier for you that way. So 70 over 100 times 350, I get 245. So 245 people, which is also 70%. Does that make sense where I got those two numbers from? Okay, so now what it's asking us to do, question C is, consider those who carpool, walk, or bike. Is this more or less than the people who take public transportation? So that's question one. It's comparing the two, which one's more? And then question two is, how many more or less? So first off, we want to figure out, what do we need to figure out here? How would I solve this? Yeah, figure out how many people are carpooling, walking, and biking. So I'll just add those up, right? So I'm just going to put C plus W plus B. Carpool plus bike, or so plus walk plus bike. For carpooling, I get 9%. For walking, I have 3%. And for biking, I have 22%. So 9 plus 3 plus 22, which gives me 34%. Cool. So I have that figured out. And then the number of people who take public transport is, oh, sorry, I got biking wrong. I did biking wrong. It's not 22.
I did the same.
Yeah. It's right. Everyone makes mistakes with the graphs. Really important. It's 5% who bike. It's really important we pay attention, right? Everyone makes mistakes with that. You pretty much get full marks if you made that mistake, just so you know, because you're showing your work here, right? So 9 plus 3 plus 5 gives me 12, 17. 17%. Cool. And then for public transport, I can see that 22% take public transport. Yeah, so we need to make a statement with this, right? So you're absolutely right. So less people, sorry, let's just put 5%, because that's what it is, right? Do we get where I got 5% from? Because it's the, yeah, you betcha, right? Yeah, you're always really good with numbers. So yeah, so 5% of people, sorry, 5% fewer people carpool, walk, or bike versus people who take public transport. And there's a bunch of different ways you could write this, but as long as you're making a statement here that just says, hey, fewer people are carpooling, walking, and biking than there are carpooling, or sorry, than there are public transports. Cool. And like, that's really all we have to do. We just have to be able to turn percentages into numbers. We're going to learn how to do the opposite next. So the two things that people struggle with when it comes to pie charts, in my experience, have tended to be turning the percentages into numbers of like people or things, and then doing the opposite thing, turning the numbers of like peoples or things into percentages. So everyone good here? No, okay, that's fine. Let me, yeah. Okay. So the next part here, this is the last part, is now we need to draw a pie graph. Now there's some blank space here left for a reason. What I'm going to recommend you do actually. So first off, this is a pie chart, right? We're going to have to express like how many, it's like 75 people in a loan is going to have to turn into something like this at some point, or maybe it's something like, you know, like this instead. We don't know yet. How would you think we would express that though? I'll give you a hint. I passed you out a piece of paper today with the protractor, which measures angles, which are measured by, sorry, kind of, you're getting the right track. Degrees. Oh, there it is. Yeah, we'll take this picture. So we use degrees to track. Is my mic on? Yes, it is. We use degrees to track the amount of, we use degrees to track how much in the circle we go. We know there's 360 degrees in a circle, right? So there's 360 degrees in a circle. So what we need to do over here, we could turn the percentages into, people. There are two things we need to do a pie graph properly. So this is where I'm going to actually want you to extend these lines here a little bit. So extend these lines a bit. And I want you to actually close off the little table here too. So you're gonna have two new boxes here. So thing number one we're gonna need to figure out is we need to figure out how many, I'll make this smaller, how many degrees each one of these things is, right? Because I need to figure out how many degrees it is in order to properly draw it in my circle. The next thing I'm also going to need is I'm going to also need to make a legend. I need to know what thing is what. There are a total of 6 things here. So it's going to be important for me to know when I look at the graph, oh, this part is cars alone. This part is carpools. This part is motorbikes, and so on and so forth. So even though the question didn't give these to you, you're going to know that you're going to need these things. So you need to figure out the amount, the number, in this case of people, the degrees, and then the legend of it as well. Okay. Yeah, so let's start figuring this out. So first off, there are 360 degrees in here, right? There's 360 degrees in this circle, right? So I'm going to scroll up for a second. If I told you, hey, I have 61% of your circle is dedicated to people who drive alone. And if you wanted to figure out how many degrees you would put this in, how could you figure out how many degrees exactly? How could you figure that out, you think? Sorry? Well, it wouldn't be half, right? It's 61%. Half would be exactly. That's how you draw it on there. But we need to actually figure out how many degrees is this, right? This is a certain amount of degrees. Well, if I know there's 61% of the circle is dedicated to this thing.
360 degrees or multiplied by 0.61.
Yeah. What's 61%? Remember, that's 0.61 of 360. Oh, okay. 219 point like something degrees. We're doing this freehand. It's not going to be, you'll be off by a couple degrees. That's fine. It's going to happen. But okay, I can see right now this is about 212 degrees. That this angle right here is about 212 degrees. So let's actually go into this now. I know I need to get the degrees, and to do that, I need the percentage. So let's figure out what percentage of our circle this is. So first off, I need to figure out how many number of people do I have at all, just to begin with. So how can I figure that out? Add them all up, right? So if I take 75 plus 200 plus 5 plus 75 plus 10 plus 15, I'm going to eventually get 200 people.
No.
Oh, did I get that wrong? Plus 5 plus 75 plus 10. Plus 10 plus. Okay, oh no, it is 200. Yeah. Oh no. So just 7, it's just 200 people in total, right? Cool. So I now know how many people there are. And I know this thing right here, this car alone, I know that is 75. This, I do want you to write this left one down. I'm not going to get you to write down the rest, but I want you to write this left one down. So I know if I want to figure out the percent that car alone people are, it's 75. I have 75 over 200 here, right? Does that make sense where I've pulled that fraction from? 75, that's how much I have of the total, which is 200 people. And then what I want to do is, if I want to turn this into a percent, in fact, I'm actually going to get us to draw that down here if you have space. Actually, or actually go above. Let's just do above here just in case. So I actually want you to do a fifth little new line here. And this one here is going to be percentage. Because we need all of these things in order to do it properly. So I want to know the percentage that 75 over 200 is. To do that, all I do is I turn it into a fraction and times that by 100. So 75 divided by 200 gives me 0.375. If I times that by 100, I'm going to get 37.5. So 37.5% of this graph, of this chart, is going to be dedicated just to people who drive themselves, right? So Aiden, how would I figure out how the percentage of people who carpool?
So you take the 20
Mhm.
and you divide it by 200,
Okay.
and then you multiply that by.
Yeah, so 20 divided by 200, all times by 100, right? Because that's what turns it into, this 100 turns it in from a decimal to a percentage. That's why we times by 100. So 10. So 10% of my chart is people who carpool. And then motorbike is going to be, Jasmine, what would I do to figure out that percentage? 5 divided by 200. And then times 100, you bet. So 2.5. So 2.5. Another 75, I already know what that is. I figured out what a 75 is before, so it's 37.5. I'm just going to fill in the rest of these here. The 10 is going to be 5, and then this 15 is going to be 7.5. So if you're ever unsure if you're getting it right, those percentages should add to 100%, right? You're never going to have a pie that has a bite eaten out of it. Cool. So that's step one is I've turned the stuff into percentages. So now, if I want to start putting this into my graph, what I need to do is I need to figure out the actual degrees that this is, right? If I told you that this is, let's just say, for example, let's just pretend, don't draw this. Let's just pretend this is 25%. Well, this is 25%, right? We know that is 25% that I have here. I'll just fill that in really quickly. So this is 25%. With those really nice, easy numbers, you're going to know that. But what this actually is, this angle right here is 90 degrees, right? 1/4 of 360 is 90 degrees. So I know this angle here is 90 degrees. If I told you something was like 10%, though, you'd have to figure out what angle it is to go from 10% here. So let's so how can I convert this percentage into degrees? Any guesses? You're on the right track. Sorry? Divide it into 360? So right track. Actually, what it's going to be is we're going to figure out, so we're going to figure out how many degrees this is by, so let me put it this way. You don't need to write this down. So right now I have 37.5 over 100, right? That's what I have here. So I'm just going to move that over here just to make it a little bit easier to see. You don't need to write this down. Right now I have 37.5 over 100. And I know that there are 360 degrees in a circle, right? So we've seen something like this before. There's two ways of doing this. One, you could just times this by, well, 3 times 3.6 to get there. You could figure out that, oh, well, I just need to now times this by 3.6. It's 100%. I'm turning this into 360. That will tell me how many degrees I have. The second thing that you could do instead if you're really good, if you're good with numbers and you understand where I'm getting these from, this one right here is 37.5. Can't I just take 37.5%, which is this in decimal form, right? And times that by 360. Again, you don't need to write this down. If you do that, so 0.375 times 360, I can see it's 135 degrees here. So you could either set it up as like that fraction ratio type problem that we've worked with all year long, or you could, if you're good with numbers, you can understand it. Oh, 37.5%, that's this thing here, right? So Aiden, what would be the degrees for this one here for carpooling?
Points is 20 multiplied by 360.
So very close, very common mistake. It's not the number of people, it's the percentage of it, right? I want to find what 10% of 360 degrees is. So 10%, 0.10 times 360 is 36 degrees here. Does that make sense why we're using the 10 there? Yeah, so the percentage is huge here. The percent is really important. So what would I put here for 2.5% here, Jasmine? If I put 2.5, isn't that a 25%? Yeah, you betcha, 0.25. Yeah. So that's another common mistake some people would make. Times 360, you bet. And that's going to give me 9 degrees. I already know what 75 is. I did it over here. It's 135. So 10%, oh, sorry, now I do 5%. So I would do 0.05, right? Not 0.5, just 0.05 times 360, 18 degrees. And then this one here is going to be 27 degrees. So is it making sense where I got these from? This is usually the thing that people struggle with the most, is turning it into a percentage and turning that percentage into degrees. It's like a two-stepper thing. So all of a sudden, I can now plot this graph, can't I? I know that I have all the degrees that each angle needs to be. If I add all these up, it should equal 360 degrees as well. So I now have a full circle worth of things I can put in. Now, I do need a legend at some point. We'll fill that in as we're going in. But to get started with here, the easiest way to get started is always going to be go to the center of your circle, go straight up. Just go straight up, draw a line. Because every graph they have to start cutting into slices, right? They're all different size slices. So go straight up, cut it into a nice line, and then we can start from there. So I don't have a little protractor tool. So this is one where you're gonna have to kind of like listen to my voice and I'll come check out and we'll come test out how it's going. But what I want you to do is, let's imagine you have your little protractor here. What you wanna do is, so your protractor should look something like this, right? Then there's a nice little center line here. Where did I put those actually? I want to take it. So on your protractor, oh, you know what? Actually, we need to cut those little inches off really quickly. Bear with me 1 second. That's not real bad. I'm going to swap out your protractors here. Otherwise, this is going to cause some issues. All I do is I just cut that. So in the middle of your protractor, you have that little straight line, right? So in the very bottom in the middle, you have this thing here. So this little line on the bottom, I want you to match up so that it's lined up like this. And then the rest of your protractor should be, let me just kind of draw that out. Should be like this. Does everyone's like that? Cool. So what we're doing now is, so first off, you've made it nice and flat against your base, which is our line that we drew. So now all I want to do is I want to measure out 135 degrees. So you're going to notice that if you look to your left, there's two numbers there. There's one here on the outside that says 170. Then there's one on the middle that says 10. You want to start with that 10. Because we're going to go from, because angles go from, I guess they go clockwise is the word to use there. They go clockwise. So we want to go clockwise from here. And as we go further and further clockwise, the angle should get bigger. And we want to eventually measure out 135 degrees, which should be something like this. And you want to make a little notch, make a tiny little notch. So like literally take your pencil, just put a little thing just outside of that where 135 is. And I'm just going to erase my little protractor that I've made. Cool. So everyone, you both have that notch? Cool. So then all you have to do is take a ruler or a pen or whatever and just make a nice straight line. All of a sudden we should be at about, oh gosh, I don't have a protractor, so I have to kind of like eyeball this. You should be at about something like this. It's a little bit more than a third, right? And that makes sense. It's greater than 33%. It's a little bit more than a third, but less than a half. It's somewhere between those. And so this is here, and I want you to write this in here, is going to be car alone. And you want to put the percent in here. Oh my gosh. Car alone. Yeah. So this is car alone. And that is 37.5%. It doesn't need to be very big. It just keeps it organized though, right? What have I done? Oh, no, I don't want to print it. Okay, so car alone, perfect. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm now going to figure out what to do for my legend there. I'm going to take just anything I'm doing. I'm going to put some striped lines here, and I'm just going to put those in there. So I'll use the same color as you guys. Just put a couple striped lines in here. I know that the striped line is cars alone. Cool. You should have something that looks like that now. So what you're then going to do next is you're going to take your protractor, you're going to go off this new line you made, right? Because that's your new base to go off of. So I'll use green for this, sure. So for your protractor should now end up something like, should be something like this. And you're going to measure out 36 degrees from that point. So make your little notch at 36 degrees, and then you just connect those two lines. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll get you to do that for these next two, which is carpool and motorbike. Oh, sorry. It will be 9 degrees. Yeah. Yeah, you bet. Oh, and so you can kind of fill in whatever you want. If you want to use colors and do different like stripe colors, I'm going to put some dots here, for example. You could do double stripes. It's something you could do as well. So there's a bunch of different ways you could shade it. There's a bunch of different ways you could do it. And if you ever like needed, oh sorry. Oh, okay. I'll come take a look there. But if you've done these three right, so this car alone, this carpool, and this motorbike, it should be exactly half your circle. Because 37.5 plus 10 plus 2.5%, 50%, right?
That's just a good measure to know if you like measured it. Oh, yeah, John. Oh, for the 37.5. Oh, okay, so we're starting from, so 37.5. All you're going to is also 37.5 degrees. You're not. Oh, sorry, 135 degrees. Apologies. So if we're going from like clockwise, right? So we'll the circle to 100. Yeah, regard notch. Make X. That makes sense.
Oh, I should probably leave my graph up too. So make sure you're updating your legend as you go, though.